Okie dokie, so I have both of them, obviously, but we're going to take a look at the 850 watt first. The first thing I did like is the box is open just like the motherboard's doing, and I know that will be something that a lot of people go, I don't care about packaging, but attention to detail and little things can all add up. Now there's two main packages inside. The first one that I pulled out has got the cables in, and then the second one has the actual power supply itself in. So if we have a look at the cable one, first thing you get to is a ROG packet, and this is a resealable kind of, it's like a sandwich bag really, if you understand what I mean, but with a frosted, I say resealable, it's well sealed. And then inside it, what we get is you get some a voucher for Cable Mod cables, and you get 20% off. You get some Velcro ROG cable ties. You get some normal cable ties as well, which I've just dropped half of them. Then you've got your normal screws to put it to bolt it in with. You get a ROG eye case badge. It's plastic. It looks a bit like metal, but it's not. And then you get some Cable Mod individual braided cables. Now that makes me think that it might have individual braided cables, and I genuinely don't know because I've not looked. So if we open the secondary package, and then inside there's two actual power supply cables to power it with. Now I didn't get this as a press sample, I actually purchased this from OC UK. So I'm assuming that they come with both, which is different to say the least, but I suppose it saves the hassle of having to have a US and then a European and then a UK. Now, so yes, we do get some individually braided cables. Now I say some because it's not all. I'm going to pull out the one that's not, and the one that's not is a Pci Express cable. You can see one of them's just normal, got like a normal braid, but then the other ones that are in here, your 24 pin is individually braided, and it's the sort of cloth braid, do you know what I mean? It's paracord, and it's all nice. Then you've got your CPU 8 pin, two CPU 8 pins, and then there is, this is a Pci Express cable. I'm just opening it up to see if it's a daisy chain cable or just a single individual one, and it is just an 8 pin to an 8 pin Pci Express, and then the other one, yeah, so it's 8 pin. It is 6 plus 2, so you can have it in either, but you get a pair of Pci Express, a 24 pin, and then you've got a pair of CPU power cables as well, although 9 times out of 100, or 99 times out of 100, you're only going to need one of those. You do get an extra Pci Express cable, and that one is daisy chained. And then you get all of the other Molex and SATA cables and everything. They're just normal flat black cables, if you look. Okay. Then the other cables that we have inside are the adapter cables, I believe. Yeah, for the 3-pin addressable, and then that then goes into a 2-pin, and this is so that you can control the lights in the power supply. And then I'm unsure what the other one is, but I'll look it up and we'll talk about it in the rest of the video, because it's like you can see the connector there. This goes in the power supply. I just don't know what end this one goes in, but we will find out. Anyway, so that's all your cables, and obviously there have been a lot of them, but what we will do is pop the main event open. Oh, it's quite a bit of weight to it. I know no power supplies are light, but it does feel quite sturdy. So with the unit on the Lazy Susan, it does come completely covered in plastic, which I'm just literally abusing off. I do believe that we've got a bit down here over this one as well. Ah, Even got a bit of plastic noise going on with it. Anyway, so this is the business side. Now this part of the actual power supply I love so much, because there has always been a debate online of people saying you shouldn't have your power supply with the fan placing upwards. Now a lot of people get confused as well, but the air goes in here and then out the back that way. That's just the way that they work. But most people would end up having it that way around, because the most cases have the fan filter in the bottom of the case, and then it would exhaust the air out the back. Obviously it's, you know, that explains why it's not the other way around, but people think that's how they have to be because power supplies are really hot, but they're actually not. They're so efficient now, they don't really get warm at all. And the other thing about them as well is where the fans don't really spin, there's never a massive amount of airflow, so you don't necessarily need to worry about it stealing air from your graphics card. Or the other thing is count it as an airflow fan in your system. The only thing can be was where they can be so passive now, sometimes you can get a little bit of radiant heat that can come out before the fan kicks in. But other than that, you don't really need to worry about it. Now I will obviously get this all powered up, and we'll see what it's like with the OLED screen and everything and the RGB. But what I need to do is I need to connect this to my power supply tester first before we get it in and get it lit up and anything so you can see. But we'll be able to see all this. I'm just not sure what the RGBs are going to do without it connected and being controlled. But you can see we've got a nice little cutout of the corner there, and you can see that there's Thor on it. I'm not sure whether it's got a sticker over the top. It does. We'll get that off. Oh, so the corner is plastic, because obviously they've had to make it so that you get that edge. Now, as I said, this, you can pretty much see this has been designed to have the case fan up. In my opinion, this is how I prefer to mount mine. But obviously a lot of cases now have power supply shrouds, and that would be the only time, if you've got a very, very close shroud, that would be the only time I would have it the other way around, so that it draws air from your case filter. But if you've not got a case with a power supply shroud, just go with it this way, because you'll be able to see the OLED panel here, and you'll be able to see the RGBs. I think there's RGB in this as well. But you can see it's got a nice ribbed top, and it actually does have the ROG eye printed over the top in gloss black, which gives it a nice kind of dual black effect. Round the back, there is a button here for the passive fan mode, and it's semi-passive, it's not completely passive, but what it does mean is that when it's not really being stressed or used, it means the fan will stop completely, and it'll only ever spin if it absolutely needs the cooling. But there's a button on the back you can just flick and decide whether you want it on semi-passive or not. ROG badge around the back. And then the business side of things, it's a fully modular power supply, which means it's obviously got no cables attached, and you put the ones in that you want. And the only real thing that you need to kind of pay attention to is you've got your addressable RGB connector here. And personally, I think that they could have, stroke should have, considering this is going to be the side that you're going to see, I think this cable could have been on the other side of the power supply unit, so it was easier to keep things tidy. Other than that, it's a fairly tidy looking bit of kit. The only other thing that we need to mention is it's 160mm length, which is a normal ATX length power supply, so it fits in literally pretty much the bulk of cases out there. Most of them are 160mm for power supplies, and some of them are a little bit bigger. I think the 1200 watt might be a little bit bigger as well. When we add the 1200 watt power supply into the mix, it's 190mm long. And then the only other real differences with what's in the box is you get a total of 4 braided PCI Express cables. These are all individual cables as well. So you get 2 more of the 6 plus 2 pin individually braided cables. And then you get a total of 2 daisy chain cables as well, so you get an extra 1, so you get more PCI Express cables. Pretty much the other side of it is exactly the same. You still get your 24 pin and everything else that I've already shown you. It's all very similar. Like I said, you just get a few extra cables, and then because you get a few extra cables on the 24 pin, you can see you've got extra connections round the back, and it is that 30mm longer, where it goes from 160 mil to 190 mil. That might impact some cases, but if you need a 1200 watt power supply, they normally are going to be a little bit longer anyway. Besides that, the screen appears to be a little bit bigger on the 1200 watt, and the ROG eye down the side is definitely that little bit bigger as well. Like I said, loads more cables down the back, and again, I will say that I think that the addressable RGB cable should be further on that side. But other than that, really now, what I need to do is do the testing, stop the cat from meowing. Hey YouTube. Not today. So I'm just going to give you a little showing of the display screen on the side. So I'm going to flick the button on my power supply tester to turn it on. You can see the lights come on. Now I can't control that at the moment, so this is just the way it goes out the box. You can see the little display screen. Now with the display screen, what that is displaying is the power that it's pulling from the wall. And if we look up here, this is the power that the load tester is actually pulling on it. So it's basically 85 watts. But this up here is the power that's coming from the wall. So it's 100 watts from the wall, give or take a little bit. And then when we come back down, we can see that down on the power supply itself. And when I change the load that I can put on the power supply itself, so I can turn this up, and I'm basically now pulling 172 watts. You can see there, so when we come back up, you can see that. And we can go right the way through. This is 50%, so this is 430 watt load, so it's 465, 466 that my power supply tester is reading. Now the flickering is just because of the refresh rate of the panel. There we go, and then we can spank it all the way up. And this is now saying it's pulling 930 watts from the wall, which is basically 852 watts. And the reason why it's 852 and not bang on 850, I'm just going to turn this down, is because of the writing that's on the bottom of the power supply. This is what I have to set it up for. And the very bottom one, I know it's the wrong way round, but it says 852 watts. I'll stick if I can find it online, I'll put the full specs up for you. But essentially, you can see that the wattage is the wattage from the wall, not what the actual system is pulling. So it's what's coming in here rather than what's being fed out here. So in this shot, there are a couple of things that we need to keep an eye on. Most importantly is here and here, because this is our ripple. So this is the fluctuation of the voltage between the minimum and the maximum. So we've got the minimum at the top here, which is minus 3.6, and then we've got the positive up here. So it means we're getting here a maximum of 10 millivolts of ripple. Now ripple's the bad thing, we want that to be as low as possible. Now I have set up 4 different loads for the machine. We've basically got 10%, which is 85 watts. A lot of systems might pull around this at idle. So this is just the reason why I've done it. It's a very low one in all honesty, but then I've got 20%, which is around 170 watts, 50%, which is self-explanatory, and then we go right the way up to 100%. Now the power supply, it's sold as an 850 watt, but with the specs that are on the bottom of the power supply, it's actually 852 watts. So that's why we've got 852 here. But so we've got the ripple that we need to keep an eye on, and then this number here is actually our efficiency level. So we're actually running at full chat. We've got 91.4 stroke 91.5 because it's flicking between ripple. In fact, here, yeah, it's 91.4. It's not going up where it's flickering ever so fast up to 5. But we'll go right the way through. So 10%, like I said, this is just a very, very basic idle for a simple system. And you can see that we've got 10.2 their millivolts of ripple. And then what we will do is we'll go up to the 20%. Again, you look at the efficiency here, it's gone with the efficiency, it was 85 before, we're now up to 90. The efficiency levels are normally noted at 50% and 100%. We've got up here, we're getting 13 millivolts of ripple there at that point. Then 13.2 I saw that go up to. Anyway, this is one of the reasons why I am doing it with you live. I can't help the flickering here, by the way. It's literally just, it's a refresh thing to do with the actual LED panel. And then if I flick it up again, nearly 430 watts of load, and you can see here we've got 92.6 efficiency. That's really high, that's quite a good number. And then up the top again, we've got 14 millivolts of ripple then showing just quickly. It's flicking around a little bit. It's going from about 13 up to 14 occasionally. Oh, 14.2, there we go. And then if we go again, we can go right the way up to our maximum load, and you can see we're consistently over 14 millivolts of ripple. On this 14.2, 14.4 I saw then. But we've got 91.5% efficiency at 100%. And one of the things I do want to say is the power supply fan hasn't actually started yet. So what I'm going to do, just to make things fair, I'm going to let this cool down for a second, because it's not even really got warm yet. But then I'm going to put it on to 100% load, and see how long it takes before the power supply fan actually kicks in, just so that we can see if these claims of the Asus heatsinks making a difference really do make a fairly noticeable difference. Normally with other power supplies by now though, that fan would have kicked in almost instantaneously when I put it on at 850 watts. So we'll see how far we can push it, but in the meantime I'm going to let it cool down a little bit just to make it fair, where we're going to put a timer on it. Okay, so I've got my phone set up so we can use this as a stopwatch. So this is literally going to go straight in at 800 watts. Going to start the stopwatch straight away, and then we will, that's literally pulling 850 watts, as you can see here, by the way. You can see that the screen's caught up now. It's a little bit out compared to my other one, by the way, on the. But what we're going to do is move the screen up, so literally almost kind of a live check. It's kind of difficult trying to give you the number on the phone and the actual unit itself, but we'll leave it down there like that. So essentially at the moment we've been going for 50 seconds, but I'm just going to let it batter it and see how long it takes for the power supply fan to actually kick in. But the fact that it's running at maximum now, oh, there we go, it was a minute. Now that might to you guys sound like it's not long, but for me it would have been instantly. So, or like with other units in the past. So I've just dropped it down to 100 watts now. Just put it right the way down. So we saw it was a minute. I actually thought it was going to be longer than that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a chance to cool down again, and then I'm going to run another one. Oh look, it's done it again already. So we were at 100 watts, it's literally gone off again. So I'm going to reset it and let's put it up to 50%, which is a relatively good gaming load if I'm honest. And then we'll see how long it takes. But one of the other things that you need to think about is it's already been running. So these aren't very scientific tests, but it's just to see. I'm amazed that it even took a minute at 800 watts, if I'm honest. The whole time that we were talking previously, when I was doing the 850 watt tests, it hadn't spun up at all. So I'm actually quite impressed. We're at 30 seconds. Anyway, I'm going to leave the camera running. I'm just going to cut in whenever it does decide to kick in. Okay, As you may have seen, it's just kicked in as my battery pack is failing, but nearly 5 minutes at 50% load, 430 watts, without the fan spinning up whatsoever. And it's gone off again. See what I mean? It's nuts. Okay, so we are on to the 1200 watt. That is the big daddy one. Now I've got it set up much the same as I did with the 850 watt. Just thought the camera spazzing out because of the screen. Set up much the same, so we've got a 10%, a 20%, 50%, and then a full-blown 100%, which is obviously 1200 watts. So I'm just going to flick the power supply on. You can see down in this bottom left-hand corner that we've got 120 watts being pulled. That's its 10%. You can also see at the top the ripple. Now the ripple, as you can see, is 15, seeing 15.2 flashing up quite regularly as well. 15.4. There we go. Yeah, oh, flipping it. It's all over the place now. We'll say 15.4 or 6, 8. Oh, we're seeing them very clearly. 15.8. Sometimes it's nice to be able to see these flashing around like that, because then you can actually see how it's performing. And then the efficiency down on the bottom, which is down here still, is 86.3 efficient. Now that does sound low, but it is only 10%. We only really want to take note of the 50% and the 100% loads really. And again, this is a very, very low load, especially for this power supply, because if you had multiple graphics cards hanging off of this, then it would be consistently higher than that. But it's just to show you a really low version of it. This also shows why you don't need a massive power supply for a low-end system really. Anyway, moving on, 20%, 242 point something watts. And well, the camera's just having a little bit of a field day because of the flashing on the red LEDs. I can't really do anything about that. Anyway, we can see now 16.17 millivolts of ripple then on 20%. Which is a fair bit, if I'm honest, but I'll explain why in a little bit. But we are up to 90% efficiency, which is nice. Then we can flick up to 600 watts, actually giving the power supply a chance to stretch its legs a little bit. But one thing I will draw your attention to now is how much the ripple has dropped now we've got a bit of load on it. So we're down to 11.4, 11.8, see if we see 12, but we'll say 11.8 at the moment at 600 watts, which is all nice. Well, it's better than it was before. It's not necessarily all nice. Oh, we did see 12 then. That's why I sound like an auctioneer waiting for it. But what we can do is then go up to the full fat 1200 watts. You can see here it's pulling 1200 watts. Here you can see it's 1324 actually being pulled from the wall. And if we look down at the system itself, you can see that you've got 1325 watts being indicated on the screen, which is pretty much spot on. I did find that the 50% was the one that was most out on, but we have got 91.8% efficiency there. With ripple though, it has gone back up again. We're looking at 17.2 then. Millivolts of ripple, 17.4. Now, I did say I'd kind of explain why, and I'll explain in more depth, but it's because there are no capacitors on the cables. So that's why. I understand why that's a little bit than we may have been expecting. But anyways, it's now really time for a conclusion. Okay, so I'm going to do another full bore test on this to see how long it's going to take for it to kick the fan in. So we're on 120 watts and it's been there for a little while, but I'm going to smash it straight up to 1200 watts and hit start. And we'll literally see how long it takes, because this one's a bit bigger, so I don't know whether it's going to take a little bit longer because of bigger heat sinks. Genuinely don't know. Just thought it would be interesting. Okay, 2 minutes 30 and the fan has just kicked in. But for something that's pulling 1200 watts, for it to have taken that long, that is amazing. Okay then peeps, so lots of results there, although I don't go as in depth as like Jeremy does at Johnny Guru. I keep it to what I see as being the important bits, so I don't overload you with too much information. And also, bad microphone. Also, I keep it to what I can explain to you and what I can understand as well. So the really sort of super technical stuff is beyond my knowledge. So anyway, with the power supplies themselves, first and foremost, Ripple. A little bit higher than we're probably used to now with modern power supplies. Now that is because these don't come with capacitors at the end of the cables or on the cables at all. The reason why, so for argument's sake, a lot of the Corsair power supplies now come with the thicker cables on the end. There is a little capacitor on the end, and that does help massively with Ripple. Superflower have been doing it longer than everyone. That's another reason why the Superflowers have always looked so good with the Ripple results. So that is why these don't have these don't look that good. And I'm a bit surprised, if I'm honest, that they're not there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Cable Mod, because I get on with Cable Mod quite well and they've made me some custom cables in the past. I'm going to ask them if there's any reason why we couldn't retrofit some capacitors to these cables. And if it's possible, what I'll do is I'll ask them to make me a set with the caps. We'll do some quick tests again, and then we'll see. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't see many of you then going out of your way to buy another set of cables to make your power supply better. But just for, you know, my own mind, I'd like to know if it's something that could be resolved quite easily with caps, or whether they've maybe not, you know, put them on there because it wouldn't make a great deal of difference. I don't know, so we're going to have to see. So I'll ask Cable Mod and we'll see where we go. But obviously the way that they come out the box, Ripple is a little bit high. And if that's something that you're going to be worried about at this level with that amount of Ripple, 18 millivolts, it's not enough to kill your rig. It's way within ATX spec. I think ATX spec is 50 millivolts, so it's less than half. But obviously when we're trying to pick between power supplies, that's going to be a big thing that I would normally, you know, like grab hold of. Most of the new decent power supplies do have them now. So it's just something, you know, that stood out. Efficiency was pretty good. Fan noise, just non-existent. Even if you, with the button at the back, even if you don't go with the 0 dBA mode, it's not loud enough that you're ever really going to hear it in your rig. The fact that they take so long to warm up as well just goes to show that those massive Asus heatsinks are actually doing their job, and they're not just there to be pretty. But I love the fact, even though you can't really see them, they are in there and still in the Asus theme. Now, price. Now, I don't think the price of the 850 is too bad. I bought this one from OC UK for £205 GBP. Now, I know that the Seasonic Platinum that this is based on is on their website at the moment for 195. So the difference between the two is very slight. And I don't think, when you consider that you get the individually braided cables, the lighting, the screen, if that's the sort of thing that you're going to be buying it for, and obviously it's going to tie in with all of your Asus stuff, I don't see it as being a bad prospect for an extra tenner. Now, the 1200 watt is £310, but the corresponding Seasonic power supply is £265, but at the moment it's on offer for £225. So the price has gone right down. And when you think about that and you kind of weigh it all up, the price is so wide. Then if you were to buy this one, I don't know whether it's going to be on offer for a while. You know, at the moment of making the review, you know, you're going to have to go and see if it's still there. They might not even have them for much longer. They might be just clearing stock, waiting for new ones. I genuinely don't know. But that price difference is fairly hefty. So if you're then looking at £80 difference for the cables and the screen, if you were to go and buy individually braided cables as a kit, an entire kit, you would spend that much difference. So there are, you know, things for and against it. But it does make the 1200 watt version much harder to recommend with that big price gap. You're absolutely going to want that screen, the RGB on it, you know, and it's still quite a unique thing with a power supply. So it's a good selling point, but you're going to have to decide yourself. But when you go to the 850 watt, that one, because it's only a tenner more, I really like it. Like, it's not, you know, a shocking amount. I was really surprised how narrow the price difference was. So that one, and the other thing is an 850 watt for most people, you could be running a 9900K and a 2080 Ti and still power it with this absolutely fine and never have any worries. One thing that I will say though is they both come with a 10-year warranty, which is amazing. But 10 years for a power supply is now getting much more common. They're not the only brand to be doing it. But I did want to draw attention to the fact that you only get a 3-year warranty for the screen on the side and the RGBs. So I'm not trying to do that to be argumentative or anything, but it's, you know, the actual power supply itself, 10 years. Those couple of things, if they go wrong, within 3 years they will replace them for you, but after that 3-year marker, if your screen goes dead, it's just dead. Obviously the power supply is still going to work, but I thought it was worth bringing up. So my thoughts are 850 watt, really like it. I'm actually glad I bought it because Asus weren't going to sample the 850 watt, and I think out of the pair of them, that would have been the one I would have sent out to more people. Because it's a little cracker and it's also the one most people are going to end up buying. If you have a monster rig with multiple graphics cards and water cooling and 20 million fans, or maybe you're running a Threadripper system or a 7980XE with a couple of cards, anyway, a really like power hungry system, 2990WX, something like that, then yes, you may need the 1200 watt. But the price difference, you're just going to have to sit and think to yourself, do you really want that screen and do you really want the RGB? Because if you don't, I'd probably say just save the money and maybe even just buy the Seasonic version that it's based on. But if you really like the screen and all that, it's just something that you're going to have to make peace with. The other thing is there's a lot of cases now have power supply covers, so it's going to get to the point where it gets quite difficult to decide. And if it's got a power supply cover, even if it has a window, most of the power supplies are still going to be turned upside down at that point, so it's going to get rid of that screen. So you're going to need to plan your system quite a lot with this to see whether it's going to work, to see whether it's going to work in your case, you know, with all your designs and stuff. And yeah, but at least you know that if you do want to change the cables, you can go and get some from Cable Mod. You can go and get all of the custom ones, different colours, and that'll be, you can get them as a full set as well. So it's just going to be something that you're going to need to kind of have a think about, as you would do with normal power supply and cable purchases and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely the one for me. The star of the show has to be the 850 because that price is quite, I was expecting a lot more Asus tax. This one is going to take a lot more thought, and you're going to have to consider your options across the market quite carefully, because there is a lot of great power supplies in the 1200 watt mark. So do you want this screen that badly? It's all going to be up to you and your wallet and whether you want to go for a beer that weekend. But that has been my review of both the power supplies. Hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments underneath. You can go and have a look on the OC3D website if you'd like to go and see more of the graphs and all the pictures and all of that sort of stuff, plus all of the plethora of other reviews and news that we do. But for now, at least, this is the tiniest one out. Ding!